Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about asking students to help set course goals. I think this is really, really important because this is one way of asking students to engage with their own learning and to figure out what it is that they want to get out of a course, right? We want students to take control of their own education so that they will be invested in it, rather than just coming to university and being told, this is what you need to know, just listen, do what we tell you, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's a great way of approaching education, but if we can get students thinking about what they want to get from their education, why this is important to them, et cetera, I think those are really, really important things. I tend to, on the second day of class, have us make a list of the things that we want to get out of the class, by which I really mean the things they want to get out of the class. Of course, I have things that I think students need to get out of the class. The institution usually has things that they need students to get out of the class, but I want students to also feel like they have some stake in this, that they have some hand in deciding what's important about their own education. So the caveat I want to put on this right here near the beginning is that for some classes, this is going to work better than others. For the skills-based classes that I teach here at Penn State, so first-year writing, business writing, writing for the social sciences, these types of classes where it's about developing particular abilities or skills, it definitely makes sense to let students help set the course goals. For content-based classes, that may or may not make as much sense. I think you could make a good case for this being useful for literature classes, for things like that. Humanities classes, arts classes, maybe. But if it's like Physics 101, chances are that students will not necessarily have a fantastic framework for figuring out what's important. Though there is a caveat to that. One thing that you can do, and one thing that I do with my students, is I prime them to figure out what kinds of things the class is prepared to teach them. So on the first day of class, I don't go over the syllabus anymore. I used to. That's the standard thing. I don't do that anymore. On the first day of class, we just sort of do introductions and whatever. I assign for homework that they read the syllabus and then that they read two other documents. I'm going to share my screen now. That's not the one I want. This one. So one thing that's really beneficial for me about teaching in a composition course is that composition courses tend to have quite a lot of scaffolding in terms of what is expected from them. So this is one of the things that I have my students read. This is the program outcomes statement from here at Penn State. We have to use a document called Penn Statements. This is required across every first-year composition course. Basically, this is the set of things that the program in writing and rhetoric here at Penn State requires that students move toward. So that's a really, really useful document. If you can establish something like that, if your program, your department, whatever it is, has some sort of outcomes statement, that's really, really, really useful. The other thing I have my students read is this now very old WPA outcomes statement for first-year composition. So that's the writing program, the Council of Writing Program Administrators. This one is from 2002, amended in 2008, but it's the one that I have, so this is the one that I continue using, and actually it doesn't make that much of a difference necessarily. The sort of core elements of like learning to write is a complex process, these elements of rhetorical knowledge, critical thinking, reading and writing, processes of writing, et cetera, those things have not fundamentally changed that much. So that's, I think, a really useful thing if you can give your students some documents like that say, here's what either we in this particular program or the larger academic discipline expects that students will learn in this course. And one of the reasons I think that kind of scaffolding is really useful is to avoid. So Mary Ellen Weimar wrote this bit in Teaching Strategies for the College Classroom. It's a short piece called Should Students Have a Role in Setting Course Goals? And she opens with this potential problem you may run into with having students set course goals. So in answer to the titular question, should students have a role in setting course goals, what she says here is maybe. But then if you ask students what they want to get out of a course, most give the same depressing answer, an A, never mind whether learning accompanies the grade. That's actually a really interesting point because I've done this setting course goals, and I'm going to show you some of those course goals set by my classes this semester. I've done this for several years now, and often nobody says an A. I often will at the end say, I guess nobody wants an A, and they sometimes chuckle one, sometimes don't. But then Weimar goes on here, if you rephrase and ask why students are taking your course, those answers are just as enervating. Nothing else was open at the time. It's in the same room as my previous course. My fraternity has copies of your exams on file. My boyfriend's in this class. I heard you were easy. I heard you were funny. Your textbook's the cheapest one, or my favorite on Lucy Benjamin's list, because my mother took this class from you 24 years ago and she said I could use her notes. Now, I am relatively cynical. I accept that these are almost certainly all reasons that students take classes in reality. In my experience, again, having had students set course goals, these are not typically what I hear. Now, Weimar is at Penn State Berks, or was at Penn State Berks when this essay collection came out. That's a branch campus of the Penn State system. I'm at University Park, the main campus. Maybe there is a difference. Maybe her students are more blunt and more honest than the students that I have here at University Park. But it seems unlikely to me. I mean, it seems unlikely to me that when you ask students what they want to get out of a class or why they're taking a class, that they're going to say, yeah, I plan to cheat because my fraternity has copies of your exams. And we all know that does happen. We know that fraternities have files of papers and drafts of essays and things like that. But are students going around telling you? I don't know. I don't think so. Not in my experience. So what I tend to get, I'm going to show you a couple of these. So this is one of the sets of course goals that one of my classes generated this semester. So I put this question up on the board. What do we want to get out of English 15? That's the course number, obviously. So what this section had said is to be able to explain myself better, to convey messages more effectively, to write better essays, to develop better conclusions, to read more effectively, to use information more effectively, to improve my editing or self-editing, to be more concise, to understand arguments better, to be able to articulate better. Similarly, if we look at another one, okay, so those ones aren't opening up. Give me just a second to try and pull those back up. Now I can share those. Okay, now it'll work. Haha. Okay. Apparently I can't share. There we go. There's a second one. Good enough. We're going to look at just two because Zoom is being a jerk. So this is another section. What did they want to get? They wanted more confidence in their writing. They wanted to improve their analytical abilities. They wanted to develop transferable skills, to improve their argumentation skills, strengthen their organization. They wanted to learn about citations. They wanted to learn how to find good sources, how to analyze arguments, to be more concise, to incorporate counter arguments. And they wanted to learn to use peer review. These are all really good goals. Again, all of these things across every section, really, that I've taught this lesson, that I've done this activity where they generate their own course goals, they come up with stuff that is actually relevant and useful and important to the course. So I don't know, maybe my experience is just very different than Weimer's experience of this. But I think students, especially when they are prepared to do this, when they read through the syllabus, when they maybe read through some of the goals that different organizations have set, the program itself sets, whatever it is, I think they're very, very capable of doing a good job with this. Now, the question then becomes, what do you actually do with this information? What do you do with the set of course goals that students generate? And Weimer lays out three potential things you could do, three ways of using these goals. So the first is to take a totally student-centered approach and adopt those goals for the course. That may or may not work. Sometimes that would work. With the sets of course goals that I showed you, those wouldn't be terrible sets of course goals to set for a first-year writing course. There's a few things that I think are missed out from that, but if that's a concern, you could add some other things. You could say, all right, these are the things that I, as the instructor, want to supplement your set of course goals with. If your program, your department allows you the flexibility to do that, and your students generate good lists, you could. I think most people are not going to do that. Typically, I think that's probably not going to be the case. That's a somewhat radical pedagogical approach in my sense of it. So there's a second possibility. Compare student and faculty goals and then show students how or why faculty goals are superior. Why? Why be a dick about it? I mean, you are in that instance. If you are going to say, all right, you've generated this set of goals, here's the official set of goals, here's why this set of goals is better than yours. First off, why make them go through the process of setting course goals if you're then just going to dismiss those? If you're not going to use those in some way, why do it at all? It's a dick thing to do at that point. And if you, like, the thing is, students don't need you to point out to them that you as an instructor or we as a discipline know more than they do. Students know that. That's not going to be a secret to them. So saying, oh, you students who have no pedagogical training and probably are in your first year of university or whatever it is, you haven't done as good a job creating course goals as these people who have done this for decades and have devoted their professional lives to this. Yeah, of fucking course. Of course, students are not going to develop goals that are as good, as focused, as purposeful, etc., etc. They don't have the training to. So that, I don't think there's any value to that approach, to just say, let's generate course goals, then I'm going to make you feel bad, then we're not going to use your course goals. I think that is a recipe for students resenting you. I would not ever, ever, ever do that. The third option, in which faculty and student goals are integrated. That's actually, I think, a good approach. What I tend to do is I kind of just put these course goals up on Canvas, the ones that students have generated. I take a picture of the chalkboard or the whiteboard, whatever it is, with my phone, and then I put that up at the top of our Canvas page, our course management system. And I encourage students periodically to return to that over the course of the semester and sort of check in on what kind of progress we as a class are making. And then at the end of the semester, we collectively return to that and assess how we did in the course. How successful were we at meeting the goals that the students set at the beginning? And I think that's a really valuable thing to do because, again, it gives them an element of control over their education that, as institutions, universities often don't do a good job allowing for them to have. So I think it's really, really beneficial. It engages students. It tells them, I think your voice, your perspective, your goals are valuable. And it lets me know the kinds of things that they are interested in learning, even if those goals do actually change over the course of the semester, and what they see as important to learn may shift as we actually start moving through the course material. But I think it's nonetheless really, really useful to do, to engage students and get them to start taking some responsibility for their own learning.